Hi guys, so we're going to pick up with simplifying expressions using the properties of exponents. Now in a previous video, we just did an introduction to the properties of exponents. Now we're going to use those to actually simplify the expressions. So let's go ahead and look at number 1 here. So you can see that we are multiplying 4x to the 4th times 5x. So what we're going to do is first go ahead and multiply the two numbers. So that would be 20. And then using the product rule, we're going to multiply, I'm going to change the color here real quick, x to the 4th times x to the 1st. Remember there's a 1 there even though you don't see it written. So with the product rule, that means it's going to be x to the 4 plus 1 because you add exponents when you're multiplying. So then this would give us a simplified answer of 20x to the 5th. And that one is all done. So looking at number 2 here, it's kind of similar to number 1, just have an additional variable in there. So we are going to multiply the same variables together. So basically we're going to multiply the x squared times x to the 5th, which basically means that we're using the product rule. So it's going to be x to the 2 plus 5. And then we're going to go ahead and multiply the y to the negative 5 times y to the 3rd. Now, some students see this negative and they want to go ahead and flip that. And technically that's true, because with the negative exponent rule you could flip it. But I would go ahead and multiply these first, see what the result is. If it's still negative, then we can deal with flipping it. So this is going to be y to the negative 5 plus 3. So then this becomes x to the 7th, y to the negative 2. So now we are dealing with still a negative exponent. So this is the point where we can use the negative exponent rule and go ahead and flip that. So then the x to the 7th is going to stay where it is, which is in the numerator, and then the y squared flips to the denominator. So this is our simplified answer. All right, so let's go ahead and scroll and look number 3 here. So this, we're going to use the power rule. Notice that we have a product inside here, and then it's being raised to another exponent. So that means that we need to distribute this 2 to both of those exponents. And of course, we're going to do that with a multiplication, because that's what the power rule, we're going to multiply the exponents. So this would be x to the negative 4 times 2, y to the 3 times 2, and then that's going to give us x to the negative 8, y to the 6th. So now again we still have this negative exponent left, so we have to deal with that, which basically means we're going to flip it to the denominator. So the y to the 6th stays in the numerator, and then we flip and the x to the 8th goes in the denominator, and that is simplified. And that didn't work out. Try that again. That's a little bit better. All right, so number 4 here, we see we have this division, the whole thing in the parentheses is division, but then we have a multiplication up top here, 3x squared is multiplication, and the whole thing is being raised to this power of 3. So basically we're going to need the power rule here, and we're going to need to distribute this 3 to every single term inside, the number of the variables inside here. So what you got to be careful with, this 3 has an exponent of a 1. It's not written, but it has an exponent of a 1. So we need to distribute the 3 to the 3 to the 1st. We need to distribute it to the x squared, and then we need to distribute it to y to the negative 3. So what is that going to look like? It's going to be 3 to the 1 times 3, x to the 2 times 3, over y to the negative 3 times 3. So then that will give us 3 to the 3rd, x to the 6th, over y to the negative 9. So now typically when you have a number being raised to an exponent, if it's not a really, really large number, you would go ahead and calculate that. Now, if you had something like 8 to the 22nd power, you're not going to do anything and try to simplify that. You're just going to leave it. But 3 to the 3rd, when you go ahead and simplify that, that's going to be 27. We have x to the 6th, and then remember that with your negative exponent, what we have here, that is in the denominator, so it's going to flip up to the top. We got to move that up to the top, so then this becomes y to the 9th. So this is our simplified answer for problem number 4. All right, so let's go ahead and start looking at the last one here. So we got a lot going on. You can see in the top we have all this multiplication, same thing in the bottom, and then we're going to need to divide. So now you got options here. Some students are going to go ahead and use the quotient rule. They're going to start subtracting the exponents. What I like to do is simplify the numerator as much as possible, simplify the denominator as much as possible, and then start looking to do the actual quotient rule. So up top here, what can I multiply? Well, I got 2 and a 5, so that's going to go ahead and give me 10. And then I have the x, and then x to the 3rd. So with the product rule, that's going to be x to the 1 plus 3. And then, of course, I have the y. Change that color here. Let's see, let's pick this one. So I got y, and then y to the 4th. So that's going to be y to the 1 plus 4. And then the whole thing is over. There's nothing I can really do to the bottom right here in terms of keeping it in the denominator. Yes, the x to negative 2 I can flip up top yet, but I don't want to do that yet. There's nothing in the bottom that I can do that's going to keep it still in the bottom. So now that will give me 10 x to the 4th, y to the 5th over 10x to the negative 2y squared. All right, so let's see what else we can do here now. Well, looking at the 10 over 10, that's simply going to reduce to be 1. So now using the quotient rule, when you are dividing, you subtract exponents. But again, you got to be careful because we have a negative here. So when I do that, we're subtracting in the numerator. So then this, I'm going to bring this down here, is going to be x to the 4 minus negative 2, because this right here is already a negative. So if I'm going to subtract it, it's minus a negative. And then y to the 5 minus 2. So then that leaves me with x to the 6th, because 4 minus a negative 2 is 6, and then y to the 3rd. And that is completely simplified. All right, so hopefully this will help you with simplifying expressions using the properties of exponents. There are more difficult problems, but this just gives you a general idea of how to go ahead and use the properties of exponents.